Hello everyone and welcome to the Quarantine Zone, where I've been watching Tiger King back to back twice in just as many days. Now you may ask, why did I do that? Well, because I'm bored. And that thing is insanity on steroids. In short, this is the most insane thing I've ever seen on TV, knowing that this is not a reality show, this is reality. I mean, I've seen fake shit with less drama than this. Now, if you haven't watched it yet, I highly recommend you do if you want to avoid spoilers, because we're going deep down into spoiler territory here, because we're going to talk about some shit that happens. Essentially, the show revolves around three characters. We got Joe Exotic, aka Tiger King, who runs a rundown shitty little zoo in Oklahoma, and he has like 200 tigers. Then we have Doug Andel, who somehow functions story-wise as a mentor to Joe, and is all around portrayed as a smarter version of him. And in the middle of it all, we have Carole Baskin from Florida. She's the arch nemesis of Joe, according to Joe, and a bit to herself. And effectively the closest of these three that the show has that is not the villain, but really there is no, clear hero of this show. They're all kind of having their own fucked up shit, and we're gonna dive into that because I wanted to cover just how fucked up the world is for big cat owners. I mean, these people are crazy cat lady on steroids. And we're talking a lot of steroids here. And the shit they get up to is not exactly for the faint of heart. I mean, one thing is that one of them tried to hire a hitman to kill the other. Another thing is all the obvious animal abuse going on, which is basically what we're going to go into in this video. Now, I figured we're gonna start off with Joe, and what a character he is. Now, how do I best describe Joe?
He's a completely insane, gay, gun-toting, drug addict fanatic.
He wasn't real. He was like a mythical character living out in the middle of bumfuck Oklahoma.
Yeah, that pretty much sums him up. Joe, according to himself, owns 187 big cats, which is a lot. Basically, my first thought was, how do you even have room for that many? I mean, I've seen an enclosure with 2 cats in it, and that was kind of a lot of room. And on top of that, most of these are tigers, which are solitary animals, so you basically need, I'd say, at least an enclosure per 2 animals so they can go out in turns. And then, a smaller individual area for them. But this is how Joe keeps his solitary by nature tigers.
They're abusing animals there as well.
Are you gonna let him in, or are you just gonna stand there?
Yeah. That's just lovely, isn't it? He's keeping them all. He's keeping, I don't know, 15 tigers? 20 tigers? In a single, relatively small enclosure. I wouldn't even call it an enclosure, it's a cage. Now, since Joe clearly has no issue keeping this many tigers in such a small area, I wonder what else kind of shit he gets into.
Things got so bad.
Oh look, a male lion with a female tiger. He is definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, breeding ligers. To the uninformed, a liger is a hybrid animal between a male lion and a female tiger. And they tend to suffer from, a bit of giantism. They get pretty fucking huge. And that's probably the whole point of having a liger, because what these guys do is they pose with the animals. It's always about, look at me, I'm so cool. And, that's what it's all is. It's just about being looked at and being perceived as cool, and the bigger the cat, the cooler you apparently are. You can basically sum this up with the bigger the cat, the bigger, well, dick. Seems to be how these guys think. Honestly, that's the only argument I can find, and it's one of the worst I've seen in a while. Now, Joe is also pretty consistently through this series short on money. It doesn't matter what he's doing, he's short on cash. So he will cost save whenever he can. And the way he does it is interesting at best. Such as the thing that, his employees get like $150 a week and a place to stay that's full of rats. But that still isn't enough cost saving for Joe. He needs more. So when he has to feed the cats, he gets meat from a meat truck that is delivered from Walmart full of expired meat.
There was a truck that picked up meat from all these Walmarts in the area that had expired to feed the animals.
And then they get a roadkill. But this is still not enough for Joe. So he cost saves by not calling the veterinarian whenever he really should, and instead they do it themselves.
All kinds of shit on there. A Rinky doing veterinarian work without a veterinarian. We had cameras on everybody.
Basically, Joe is a recipe for disaster already. But luckily, karma seems to have gotten him. It took her time to get her claws in him, but she got him, and, well, he's currently serving 22 years in prison for one count of attempted murder, I think, or hiring, something like that, and 5 counts of animal abuse. Specifically, his way of euthanizing a tiger was a bullet. I mean, I'm just sitting here going, what if he missed? How was that the best way? He's not exactly skilled in this. But we'll get back into Joe later. Now we're going to move on to Doug Antle.
Yes, is the founder and director of Tiger.
Good afternoon, guys.
Whose name is Bhagavan Antle, which basically means he calls himself God.
Bhagavan is the master of the universe. It's the all-knowing, all-seeing kind of guy.
And your dad is that guy.
For certainly in his universe, he definitely is that character.
And he has a degree in Chinese medicine, and then that means he now calls himself Doc. It's not like he started to be a veterinarian or anything that we would call qualified to call yourself that. And to be honest, the fact that he calls himself a name that basically means God should sum him up perfectly to how he's acting and what he does. God is almighty, God is in control, and God decides what's right or wrong. And effectively, without directly saying the word, the series basically says he's running a sex cult. And he's not exactly in a position that makes it look like he's not. It's very much the opposite, actually, when you look at the just from a glance. So, not a smart move. Now, everybody agrees that he's basically the smart version of Joe, and I completely agree in this. Joe is pretty dumb. It's not that hard to be the smart version, but he is definitely a lot smarter. Throughout the entire series, he is basically accused about the same shitty tactic, the same shitty business deals, the same shitty attitude to wildlife, and you don't really see it as much. It is all hearsay. There is some where you can go in and say, yeah, that's a dumb idea, but you can't directly state that he is treating his animals like shit. All we have is hearsay and animals that go missing. So that's, a little bit, but that's all we get. And again, and he's also extremely skilled at arguing his side. You take his arguments and you can go, in a moment there before you realize, hey, what the fuck? And when you look at the 3 facilities overall, what we see, dogs look like the better facility. He understands this premise that if he is to do this and make money off of this and run his little empire here, or kingdom, whatever you want to call it, he needs to have a perceived professionalism about it. And he manages to do that quite well. So, I acknowledge that he does that. I also acknowledge that what he also seems to be doing is shitty business ideas. This also means that, the show mostly focuses on all the sex cult rumors, because that's a lot better TV than, we once heard that he did that, or we once heard he did that. Which means we end up with, we once heard he did that. The first obvious thing he does is he breeds ligers, because he's, again, the bigger the cat, the bigger the dick.
My little man.
Now this is a liger?
Well, I always don't say they're ligers because there's like an anti-liger vein.
And it's all we get. We get these snippets, like someone says, cubs go missing when they reach a certain age. Another says, he has a crematorium on the site. That's all the snippets we get.
He was a good tiger.
What happened to him?
We didn't really ask, because he's like, I know where they go. We didn't see that, and we weren't really part of that.
One of the main things he told Joe Exotic, you can't keep them all. That's a bad business decision, because once a tiger gets out of the stage where you can use them, they're nothing more than a bill then.
The only more concrete thing we get is to the very end. We get this shot. What we see here is an invoice from Joe to Andal about Andal purchasing 2 tigers, which is illegal, by the way. So that's the closest real thing we get in this, because Andal is the smart one. He even states how much it costs to provide a proper diet for a tiger, which of course is way more than Joe does. And immediately the show cuts straight to Joe to make him look like the villain. That is very obvious, the real villain, but Andal is somewhere in between here. They don't know how to attack him, basically. They do enough, so we are consistently in the know that it seems that he does shady shit. But we don't have enough to actually prove it. So in the end here for Douglas, he looks like the proper one, the safe one, the one that, you can take a photo with. He looks the part. He speaks the part. He's got the charisma. He knows what he's doing. But there's just enough for us to know that he's doing shady shit, because he's got cup petting. He's got ligers. And he obviously states that he makes a shit ton of money on especially cup petting. There's a guy saying he would pay anything to keep coming back to do it. What this is about is we can't stop people like Andal or Joe, really. To some degree we can, but in the end we probably can't. What we really need to do is inform people of what fucked up shit they're wanting to pet a cub ends up in. What does that create? And if you can stop him, well, then the other kind of automatically goes away, doesn't it? Because it's all about money. But enough about Doc. He's a chapter on its own, so let's get on to Carol Baskin. She's described by her husband this way.
I think it would be fair to say that Carol is the Mother Teresa of cats.
I don't know about you, but I feel like somebody should tell him that Mother Teresa was a horrible, horrible human being who treated people like shit. She was really good at fundraising, though. Or just to hear me out now. Does he know, and did he intentionally use that to tell us that she's terrible? I don't know. I'm just saying that's no interesting door, But in a nutcase, she sees herself as the hero of the big cat world. But I'm not that sure that she is. On the surface, yes, it doesn't seem that she's abusing any of her animals at all. It actually looks like they're being treated quite well. But an issue with her is how quick she is to just debunk and throw out her past, because Carol didn't start with saving cats. Carol started with breeding cats. She basically throws all the blame for that on her late husband, which basically the show says that, if anybody murdered him, it's probably her.
Don and I had differing feelings about conservation and breeding.
Now, I'm not really going to get too much into that. I believe it's episode 3. It's basically dedicated to that. It's very interesting, and there's a lot of circumstantial stuff. But, nothing concrete. So, I'm not going to say she murdered her husband. I'm going to say she's the best suspect. She has the best motive, that's for sure. What bothers me about her is not that because, a lot of people are like, did you see how she reacted to that and that? Well, to be honest, if you didn't do it, and somebody then, for 25 years keeps telling people that you did and keep pointing fingers, you're gonna probably feel it's pretty fucking dumb. So, I'm not gonna get into that. What I am gonna get into is the fact that she started by doing the same shit as everybody else. She was breeding big cats for pets. There's even direct video evidence of her saying that. And she immediately just goes, nope, that was Don, her late husband, that was him, it was all him, it was not her.
I believe that I sold Don and Carol Lewis our very first tiger in 1995.
Our names are Don and Carol Lewis. We have really enjoyed our exotics. Throughout this tape, we'll show you how we take them from the mother, acclimate them to social life with people.
She had called me up and asked about raising baby animals, said she was going to do a how-to video.
They have to be taken this young from the mother in order to make good quality pets from them.
I believe in second chances. But to get that second chance, in my book, you gotta own up to your shit. I mean, own up to what you did. And then, we can all grow. We can all learn. But at least acknowledge what you did. It's not that hard, really. But is it because she's so afraid of it? It's right in front of us, man. Because of this desire to deny it, I decided to dig into the Big Cat Foundation. It's a foundation, which means, I can get to its financial statements. It's actually very readily available on their own website. You can go in and you can get all the financial statements for the different years. I think it was all the way back to 2004. Now, what bothers me is, this is a cat sanctuary that, on paper, doesn't really take in a lot of cats. If a cat dies, then they have room and they take in a new cat. But there's no real increase, but there's an increase in donations. There's increases in salary costs. And every year, there are hundreds of thousands of dollars in profits that are just being left on basically a bank account. Every year, this number increases, and now we're talking millions of dollars just sitting there in the bank account. And the only numbers that has risen along with them is salaries, yet she doesn't pay the vast majority of her staff. Who gets that money? We're talking $800,000 a year now. And on top of that, a lot of the enclosures looks a bit run down. I mean, if you have that much money, why would you not bother just, improving on them, renovating, or expanding? I mean, it doesn't appear that well to be hoarding this money. Because then you figured, okay, maybe it goes to donations into conservation efforts and stuff. No, at no point does that go above $90,000 a year. This is the big selling point of this place, is it's a place where animals come. It's a sanctuary for them. And then they also do conservation work. Yet this is not even the primary expenses of this place. They sit on a lot of real estate. From my perspective, if it's a foundation, shouldn't this money go to conservation efforts and protecting big cats instead of just collecting dust on some bank account and paying somebody a salary? I acknowledge some people needs to be paid. Some people needs a salary. You can't have people work full-time something without, an income. But still, most of them don't have an income from this. So why is it that high? And why is so much money just put aside? I don't get it. It just gives me this sense of disturbance, a sense of, uneasiness. It doesn't feel right. I'm not saying she does animal abuse, and I'm not saying she killed her husband. The show is saying that. I'm saying there's an indication she's making money off of these cats, and that is a bigger motivator than to save them. It seems like she's found a way to be the hero and make more money than any of the others could even think about, and having less of the cost because they have less animals. I mean, Joe's expenses on just food for tigers alone are higher than her total every single year. Yet she makes a lot more money than he does. It bugs me. It just bugs me. But enough about Carol and what is potentially a smart way of making money instead of actually preserving and protecting animals. We're gonna go back to the horror show that is Doc and Joe, because I want to get into why they do what they do. What is the motivator for this kind of treatment of animals? And let's just be honest, it's always the same thing. Money. It's always money. We live in a capitalist society here. Money makes the world go round. And these guys saw a market and they are providing the supply. Again, Andal is just better at hiding it and looking like he's doing the right thing when he's not. He's got the cup petting, of course. He's got all this locked down. It is explained through the show that he increases the amount of cups he has at all given time. So there's always cups for petting, which is a terrible thing, really. And again, the cups are the key, because only until they reach a certain size can you actually control this animal. There's only to a certain point where you have the 100% the control. After a certain point, the tiger can do serious damage. You can do that already, but you'd have some level of control where you can physically be stronger than it. There's a point where that stops, and you need the cubs to do this. And, well, cubs is the big moneymaker. Joe is asked, and he doesn't even flinch when he says how much you can make off cub petting.
From the time that they're 4 weeks old to the time that they're 16 weeks old, you can profit $100,000 on that cub.
It's so much money that even Andal is willing to risk a larger cub could hurt a small child. I've seen the damage a normal house cat can do. Imagine just doubling that size, tripling it, and you still have a cub, but the damage with the claws and teeth can be substantial. Joe, though, is, as always, the true opportunist in this. He will do anything for money, and he will do it openly. Selling cubs? No problem. It's been illegal for years. Done like that. Not even a flinch. He will even openly talk about how they went to malls to have people pet these cubs. And he would make up to $40,000 per freaking mall. It's insane.
Today we have a Siberian tiger, an Indo-Chinese tiger, a two-toed sloth, a black panther.
Joe was taking tiger cubs, stick them in a semi, and cart them to malls all throughout the Midwest.
And they would do cub petting. You can take your picture with this little baby cub. Look at me! Awesome!
And how do you think they are managing to control the tigers? Even when they get larger, how do you think the tigers will accept that a dude is standing in the enclosure and they're not eating him immediately?
She's panting hard.
I know she's panting hard, but she's having a cub. You'll see. Watch your ass. Give me a hole cut. Give me a hole cut. Addie, there's a towel in my car. Go get it. You guys better hope you got KMR. Everything's alright. Everybody calm down. We'll be alright. Y'all just do what you're supposed to do.
Not even 5 minutes old, and it's been ripped from its mother so that it can imprint on humans. That is wrong on such a basic level of decency that if you do that, you are a genuinely terrible human being. That's the kind of shit Joe does. That's the kind of shit that these parks do. At one point, Joe can't even afford to feed the fucking tigers. And in the series, they show this where the staff are literally saying that the meat trucks are not as frequent. And you see them standing there with like 20 tigers and they don't have enough buckets. They already know they're gonna fight over it now. And they don't know what to do. That's the kind of abuse that happens here, because abuse is not just shooting a tiger in the head. It's not just taking a newborn cub from its mother. It's not just abusing it to make money. It's also not being able to afford food for your animals. I mean, if you take on an animal, making sure it gets food is just as high. Making sure it gets food is just as high a priority as feeding yourself, really. You're responsible for this life, and they don't have any other way of getting food. They're locked in a cage. If you're in a position where you can't do that, you need to leave that position. Otherwise, you're truly a horrible human being. In the end, it does seem that Joe somewhat realizes that he's the villain. He is not the hero. He wants to be, but he's the villain. He seems to realize it at some level, that he is the bad guy. But at that point, it is far too late. What he has done for so long, and he's even tried to have someone murdered at this point. And sadly, in the end, not a single of these tigers are rescued, if that's what you want to call it. They all just went to another guy. The next guy in line, and he's gonna keep doing this shit, potentially just at a better facility, but that's still up in the air. Maybe if the new facility will have some more room, it'll get a little bit better, but I doubt it. I doubt it'll ever even be finished. If people should remember anything from this, it's predators and tigers are wild animals, and you should treat them that way. If you can get close enough to one to take a photo, something is wrong with that tiger. Something has happened to it that shouldn't have happened. Don't get a photo taken with a tiger. Don't pet a cub. It has a horrific backstory that you don't get to know, because that will destroy your enjoyment of this, which it should. I'm pro zoos. I believe they have a role to play. It's an important role, but there's always gonna be, that one idiot who ruins it for everyone else. Usually, especially in this world, it's pretty easy to tell who's the idiot, because why in the world would a private person like me or you want to own a tiger? A 500-pound predator that can kill you in less than 5 seconds. Why would you want to have that as a private person? It will cost you a fortune, and you don't have the time, means, or facilities, or training to take care of it. If people want to own big cats, in my book, from my perspective at least, I can't see any other reason than profits and to look cool. That's it. That's what it's all about. And it doesn't work. At least here in the end, it looks like Joe has decided if he's going down, everybody's going down, and he's taking them with him. It's out of revenge more than anything, but maybe that's enough. Maybe it's enough for it to be out of spite. Just to fix some of these underlying issues in what is supposedly the civilized world. And honestly, the show ends with a really sad scene, because it implies that where Carol went from breeding cubs to protecting and somewhat doing the right thing, and then Joe seems to have gone from doing the right thing deep down to ending up this twisted, terrible version of himself. In the end, the lure of money somehow became more important to him than the animals he started out loving. Eventually, it seemed that only money and fame mattered. And at that, I'm gonna leave it there. Joe's in prison. Andal has been raided by the police, apparently. And Baskin seems to be doing what she does. So that's it for this video. If you want to, like, subscribe, comment. If you don't, that's fine too. And until then, I'll see you next time.
5,000 right here. God, they're tiny, aren't they? They just never stop screaming.
Exotic animals that's opening up. It's a refuge for unusual creatures.
The GW Exotic Animal Park has over 70 big cats in their park.
These are very dangerous animals, very beautiful animals, but they have a place in the world, and that's in Africa and Asia and India, not in Oklahoma.
The state needs to pass laws that this breeding has got to stop.